Sao Paulo. So in my opinion, it's the best and also the worst city in Brazil. So in this video, I'm going to explain why. So let's start with the positives. So Sao Paulo is a massive city. It's got over 12 million inhabitants. And if you look at Greater Sao Paulo, it's got over 20 million inhabitants. Just to put that into perspective, so Sweden, so I'm Swedish, so Sweden has a population of just over 10 million. So Greater Sao Paulo has twice the population of the whole of Sweden. I mean, it's just crazy how big Sao Paulo is. But even though it's such a big city, I still think it has a certain beauty to it. Now, it's not like Rio de Janeiro or Florianopolis or Fortaleza, where it's right next to the coast and it's got lovely beaches. No, Sao Paulo is situated away from the coast, and you'll have to drive for 2 or 3 hours to get some nice beaches in the northeast part of the state of Sao Paulo. So if you're after a city that has lots of beautiful beaches and mountains surrounding the city, then you'd choose Florianopolis, Fortaleza, Rio de Janeiro instead. But saying that, Sao Paulo still has a lot of beauty. So first of all, it's quite a green city. It's got lots of parks. So the biggest park in Sao Paulo is called Ibirapuera. So this is a very big park. It's over 158 hectares. And it's got a big lake. It's full of paths for cycling and running, and also has playgrounds and museums and exhibition halls as well. So this is a very nice park. It's one of my favorites in Sao Paulo, that's for sure. And then another very nice area is the Botanic Gardens of Sao Paulo. So this is also very big. It's 143 hectares, full of nature, and it's also got some big greenhouses as well, which I found very impressive. Another good thing about the Botanic Gardens is that right next to it you've got the Sao Paulo Zoo as well. So when I went there with my wife and daughter, we went to both places and it was a really nice trip. But that's not the only reason why I think Sao Paulo is a beautiful city. It also is full of art. So there's a lot of graffiti and also drawings on lots of big buildings in Sao Paulo, which is very nice. And one of the places where you can see a lot of this street art is the neighborhood of Villa Madalena. And there you got a place called Beco do Batman. And that's just an area just full of graffiti and street art. And it's really cool. And then in the city also you've got lots of art museums, exhibition galleries. One of the most famous is the Museo de Arte de Sao Paulo. It's the art museum of Sao Paulo. And then also you've got the Farol de Santander. And both of these have big exhibitions of art and is definitely worth visiting. And also the architecture of many of the buildings in Sao Paulo as well, I think are really cool. So you've got lots of old buildings, you've got a big cathedral, Catedral de Sé, and then also another nice old building is Museo de Ipiranga. But then contrasting with that, you've got lots of new buildings as well. So if you go to, for example, a street called Faria Lima, so that's a very wealthy commercial financial district. And there you've got lots of modern high-rise buildings. And I think some of these buildings are pretty interesting. Okay, so another positive thing about Sao Paulo is that you can find nearly everything here in Sao Paulo. So I'm talking about shopping, restaurants, bars. I mean, Sao Paulo has this in droves. So if you want luxury exclusive stores, you can find that in Sao Paulo. So there's a road called Oscar Freire. There's loads of stores selling exclusive brands. And then obviously there's lots of shopping malls as well. So there's a big shopping Guatemi in Faria Lima, for example. And then another fairly exclusive shopping mall called Shopping Cidade Jardim as well. But Sao Paulo doesn't just have shops for expensive brands. So if you're after something specific, the chances are Sao Paulo has a store selling it. So my wife likes to collect crystals and stones. And so when we went to Sao Paulo, we went to this really big crystal and stone store called Le Gip. And there they sell every type of stone and crystal that you could ever imagine. So yeah, you can find most things in Sao Paulo and it's very good for shopping. But it's also great for restaurants and bars. So you've got restaurants serving nearly every type of cuisine you could think of. And some areas that have really good restaurants are Villa Madalena and also Rua Augusta. So there you can find some really nice and cool restaurants. And a restaurant that I really like is Italy. So this is close to Faria Lima, which I mentioned earlier, and there they serve some really good Italian food. And there's even a Swedish restaurant in Sao Paulo, which I haven't seen in any other city here in Brazil. So it's always nice to go there and have some traditional Swedish food. Another good thing about Sao Paulo is that it's full of different cultures. Sao Paulo is full of people who are descendants from Portuguese immigrants, Italian, Asian, and many other countries as well. So just to give you a few examples, Sao Paulo has the biggest Japanese community outside of Japan. And a large part of this community is in the neighborhood of Liberdade. So it's a really nice area full of Japanese restaurants, supermarkets, and stores. But it's not just Japanese, there's also Korean and Chinese as well. So it's a real Asian mix in that neighborhood. And Sao Paulo also has a big Italian community, and they estimate about 6 million people in Sao Paulo are descendants from Italian immigrants. And there's even a couple of Swedes in the city as well. And then finally, another positive about Sao Paulo is that it's a very wealthy city. So Sao Paulo is the financial and economic capital of Brazil. So it's got a very strong economy based on finance, manufacturing, technology, and services. So the city has lots of big national and also multinational companies based there, and this creates a very strong jobs market. So lots of people move to Sao Paulo because the job opportunities are very good here compared to other cities in Brazil. And also with Sao Paulo having a strong economy, that generates a lot of wealth for the local government, and they can use this money to invest in infrastructure in the city. So certain parts of the infrastructure of Sao Paulo work very well. So for example, the underground or subway in Sao Paulo. So Sao Paulo has a very big subway or underground system, which is relatively modern and clean, and they even have air conditioning in the trains, which I know that some cities in Europe don't even have. So I mean, if you use the underground in London, for example, in summertime, it can be completely unbearable because practically none of the trains have air conditioning. It's awful. So I was very impressed by the subway in Sao Paulo. Also, Sao Paulo has a very big airport called Guarulhos, and they've just extended it and created a new terminal, which looks very nice, and now they're updating the old terminals as well. So it's lots of investment there. But also in terms of policing, you can see that the city invests a fair bit in that, because when I was walking around Sao Paulo, I was constantly seeing police, which gave me a good sense of safety. But there are also lots of challenges with the infrastructure in Sao Paulo, and I'll get to that when I start talking about the negative points. So don't think that everything's great with the city. Okay, so now let's talk about some of the negative points of Sao Paulo. And let's start with infrastructure. So like I said, Sao Paulo is a massive city. In the metropolitan area is 20 million, and these 20 million are crammed into this one city. And that causes a lot of problems. And one of them is traffic. So traffic in Sao Paulo can be horrible. So I went to Sao Paulo recently, and I arrived on a Monday morning at the airport of Congonhas, which is in the center of Sao Paulo. And this is what I was greeted with, just lots and lots of traffic. And then this is the queue for getting a taxi. So it goes all the way back there. And it took nearly an hour for me to be able to get a taxi. So there can be lots of problems with traffic. I mean, they have implemented some things like Rodízio Municipal to try and reduce the number of cars driving around in the city center. But it hasn't managed to solve everything, that's for sure. But I mean, this isn't just an issue in Sao Paulo. Many other cities in Brazil also have lots of traffic problems, and also other countries as well. And another thing that I really don't like about Sao Paulo is the airport Congonhas. So I mentioned earlier the airport called Guarulhos, which is a big international airport more on the outskirts of Sao Paulo. So that's big and fairly organized and good. But then you've got another airport in the center of Sao Paulo called Congonhas, and that airport I do not like at all. And that's because it's small and super, super busy. So this video I shot here is me going to my gate And you can just see it's just this small area with, I don't know, about 10, 15 gates and everyone crammed in here. And then they make announcements, but you can't hear the announcements because everyone's talking and it's super hot and it's just total chaos. So in my opinion, this is not a good airport at all. But they can't really do much because it's in the center of Sao Paulo, so they can't really expand it much. And it's super popular because it's so practical to go to this one rather than have to drive to the outskirts of Sao Paulo to go to Guarulhos. Also, there are other infrastructure problems. So, for example, sewage. So Sao Paulo treats about 70% of its sewage, about 30% goes straight out into the rivers. And a lot of the rivers in Sao Paulo, they stink from sewage. That's for sure. So that's another problem. And then also Sao Paulo can have some problems as well supplying water to all the residents as well. I mean, I remember back in 2015, 2016, there was this severe drought and lack of water in Sao Paulo, and all the reservoirs in Sao Paulo ran dry and people didn't have water, and it was very, very bad. And then since then, there've been some smaller issues as well with certain neighborhoods not getting a supply of water because there's a lack of it. And another problem that Sao Paulo faces is poverty and crime as well. So there's lots of wealthy people in Sao Paulo, but then there's lots of poor people as well. And estimates are there's about 80,000 people who live on the streets. I mean, that's a big number. I mean, that's basically a small city of people who just live on the streets in Sao Paulo. And then Sao Paulo also has lots of favelas or shanty towns as well. And they estimate about 3 million people live in favelas in Sao Paulo. So some of the big and famous ones are Heliópolis and also Paraisópolis. So those are two big favelas. Now the favelas in Sao Paulo are a bit different to Rio. So in Rio, you kind of got the favelas right in the center of the city, and you've got really expensive apartment buildings right next to favelas. Now in Sao Paulo, it's a bit different to that. I mean, you have some in the city center. A lot of them are kind of more on the outskirts. So you see the favelas a bit less in Sao Paulo than you do in Rio when you're walking around the central neighborhoods. And some of these favelas in Sao Paulo can be very dangerous, lots of crime, while others are a bit more calm and a bit safer. But also with a lot of poverty comes crime. So I mean, I mentioned earlier that when I was walking through kind of the central neighborhoods of Sao Paulo, I saw a lot of police, but I mean, it's very difficult for the police to police 20 million people. So there is still a fair bit of crime in Sao Paulo. So if you look at the website Numbeo, for example, here they give an indication of crime levels in various cities. I mean, it's not that accurate, but it just gives you a feel for it. So you can see here that Sao Paulo has a ranking of 70. And then if you compare that to Florianópolis, for example, here in the south, the ranking is 47. So it's saying that crime in Sao Paulo is significantly higher than Florianópolis. But then if you go to Rio, for example, there's 75, so a bit higher than Sao Paulo. And if you go higher up, here the crime in some of the cities are even higher. So like Salvador, it's 76. And if we just compare that to, for example, London, it's 54. Stockholm is 46. So it's saying that the crime levels are relatively high in Sao Paulo. But what I would say is that when I walked through some of the more central neighborhoods of Sao Paulo, I felt relatively safe because there were lots of police. But then there are other neighborhoods that you really do want to avoid. And there are one or two of them in the center. So where they have the big cathedral, for example, there you do need to be a bit careful. It's here. So this area here, for example, is slightly dodgy. I mean, it's still worth going to look at the cathedral, but be careful with your possessions and don't go there in the evening. And then there's also another area in central Sao Paulo called Cracolândia. So that's a very dangerous area which you want to avoid, where they take a lot of illegal substances, let's just say that. And that's around this area here. I mean, it kind of moves around a bit, I think, but just so you can see, it's pretty central. Okay, and another negative thing about Sao Paulo is the cost of living and the cost of housing. So the cost of living in Sao Paulo is very high compared to other Brazilian cities, but it still is lower than many other countries. So if we look at this website again, Numbeo, so this is now the cost of living index. And if we click on Sao Paulo, the index is 32. Compare that to Florianopolis, which I think is slightly lower at 29. But then if we look at the north here, for example, Fortaleza, it's at 28. So they're saying the cost of living is a bit higher in Sao Paulo compared to the other cities. But what I would say is that if you compare the cost of living in Sao Paulo to the smaller towns in Brazil, in the countryside, then you'll have an even bigger difference. But if you compare that to some cities in other countries, so if we just look at New York, for example, the index is 100. So Sao Paulo is 32, New York is 100. So I say New York is 3 times more expensive than Sao Paulo in terms of cost of living. If we look at London, it's 82. And let's look at Stockholm, 63. So the cost of living is high in Sao Paulo, but significantly lower than the cities in many other countries. And then if you actually click on this, it gives you more details. So it's saying that a single person will need to earn about 3,300 reais per month, excluding rent, in order to live in Sao Paulo. So 3,300 reais is $580 per month, but that excludes rent. So if you then look at average rent for 1-bedroom apartment in the city center is 3,500 reais. So if you want to look at cost of living including rent, which makes more sense, it's going to be about 7,000 reais. So adding this number to the number at the top there, and 7,000 reais is $1,200 per month. Obviously, this totally depends on your lifestyle and what kind of apartment you want to rent and where you want to rent it. But just to give an indication, it's about $1,200 per month. And also the cost of buying property in Sao Paulo is very high. But actually, it's not the highest in Brazil. There is one place where the cost of property is actually higher. So let's have a look at that. So this is a good website to kind of just show you the cost of property in Brazil. So if you go down here, they've got a list of some of the big cities. If we look at Sao Paulo, the cost per square meter, they haven't got a cost per square foot. So the cost per square meter of property in Sao Paulo is 9,200 reais, which is $1,600. So you got Rio de Janeiro, which is very similar, but then you got other cities like Recife, Porto Alegre, Fortaleza, which have much lower cost of property. Like I said, there is one city which is actually more expensive than Sao Paulo, and that is Florianopolis in Santa Catarina. Here it is 9,700 reais per square meter. Paulo isn't the most expensive, but it's at the top. And this is quite a good website actually. So what then you can do is you can actually click on Sao Paulo, and it will show you which are the most expensive neighborhoods. So here you can see. So you can see here the red is the most expensive, which is in the center of Sao Paulo, which isn't a big surprise. So you got Pinheiros, Vila Madalena, where the price per square meter is 13,000 reais, and then lots of other neighborhoods here. And I think one of the most expensive is this one here, which is Itaim Bibi. And that's where you've got the street of Faria Lima, which I talked about. We've got all the big new high-rise buildings, and lots of companies have headquarters there. So I'll just show you a few properties in that area so you can have a look. So let's choose that neighborhood. 2-bedroom apartments. So you can see that you got 2-bedroom apartments for 1,200,000 reais. It's $212,000. Got another apartment here, again 2 bedrooms, slightly bigger, 80 square meters. That's 2.4 million reais. So that's over $400,000. And you can see the prices fluctuate around that, between 1 million and 2 million. But then surrounding this red area here, you've got yellow areas here, which are a bit cheaper. And then going further out, you have green areas. And like any other city, when you're searching for a property, I mean, the key things is that you're close to public transport, it's safe, close to good stores and restaurants and so on. And the same applies to Sao Paulo. I guess the safety aspect is a bit more important in this city. Maybe I can do another video specifically on properties in Sao Paulo. Okay, so that's my opinion on Sao Paulo. I think it's a great city to visit. And I really like going there to see a few friends, visit a few restaurants, bars, and go to a few parks. But I personally would not want to live there. But for someone who's searching for a good job, especially if you want to work for a big multinational company or the headquarters of a big Brazilian business, then I think your prospects of finding a good job are the highest if you go and live in Sao Paulo. Now this video is just about the city of Sao Paulo. Then you've got the state of Sao Paulo as well, full of smaller cities and towns. And there you've got lots of really nice areas to live in as well. And many people, they live in the smaller towns surrounding the city of Sao Paulo. Some commute in, which can be a bit difficult, but a lot do. And a lot of business, they've moved out of the city of Sao Paulo to these smaller cities and towns surrounding the city. So actually there's a fair bit of wealth and job opportunities in these towns and cities as well. And I actually did a video about the 10 best cities in Brazil, and I did mention a couple of smaller cities in the state of Sao Paulo. Okay, so I hope you found this video interesting and useful. Please leave a like, subscribe. If you've got any questions or anything, leave in the commentary below. So thanks for watching. Until next time.